Hey everyone, welcome to Anarchapulco TV, your home for the world's premier Liberty Conference happening in Acapulco, Mexico, February 10th to 20th. And welcome to the show. I'm David Rodriguez, and we have another mainstay speaker I'm very excited to introduce you to. If you haven't seen his talks on YouTube or you haven't met him live, he's been one of the originals who's been attending, I think since the beginning, 2015, and just speaking about freedom, actually one of the visionaries in this freedom awakening, as I think. And he's an author, a speaker, a musician, and just a guy of a whole bunch of talents, film producer. He's done a lot of cool things, and someone who I think everyone should know about because he is someone who can explain what's happening with freedom and also kind of scale up that conversation. So we're going to get into that conversation right now. But first of all, let's welcome Mr. Larken Rose. Welcome to the show.
Howdy, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we appreciate you so much. And what's exciting is that you do have a seminar called Candles in the Dark. And I think today's conversation, we're talking about the importance of discussing freedom. You know, what a concept that if we're going to get the word out about freedom, it's up to people like you and me and your wife, Amanda, and people out there, Jeff Berwick, the founder of Anarchapulco, to actually have these conversations. And one of the reasons I love what you're doing is I attended your seminar about 2 years ago in Southern California, and also this past year at Anarchapulco, and just seeing how it's evolved. It's been really helpful for my own talking with people and being patient. So for some of the people who might not know what the seminar is, could you tell them a little bit about what is Candles in the Dark and why it's really important?
Well, in a nutshell, having been an anarchist for 23 years now, I've talked to more hundreds of statists than I can count. And over the years, accidentally learned that the biggest obstacle has nothing to do with philosophy and nothing to do with evidence and logic and anything like that. It has everything to do with human psychology and the things that get in the way of people hearing an idea that's new and uncomfortable for them, like an idea that goes against what they already believe, the paradigm they're already comfortable with. That's the entire problem. And I can't count how many voluntarists I've seen expressing constant frustration and like, I explain it perfectly clearly and it makes perfect sense. And I don't know, these people are just too stupid to understand it or just whatever. They like to be slaves or whatever. And I'm just frustrated. I just give up. And I totally sympathize. I totally sympathize with that sentiment. But I want people to understand it is never because all the people out there are too stupid or because they're incapable of understanding it or anything of the sort. It's because their psychology makes it too uncomfortable to hear what you're saying unless you know how to say it just right. And Candles in the Dark is all about knowing how to tiptoe through the minefield of their brain so that you don't set it off and make them perceive you as some scary fringe enemy trying to destroy everything wonderful about this great nation and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. And actually have them hear what you're saying. And unfortunately, logic and evidence just don't do it. I wish that was enough, but it's not. But there are real effective ways to have friendly, happy discussions with people who have never heard of these concepts and still have them not freak out and have tantrums and have it turn into an argument. But it takes self-discipline and it takes learning this method that we teach in Candles in the Dark.
Right. Yeah, one of the things I've learned from you is that the great quote, and there's so many great quotes. By the way, it's normally a 2-day seminar that you've been doing this for the last, 2 or 3 years. I think there's an online version now too. And I'm curious, I've heard on the previous interview with Jeff that this might be the last live seminar in Acapulco in February 2020. So if you're thinking about coming, do come and you get a chance to engage with Larken and Amanda. And it's so fascinating to talk with intelligent, kind, peaceful people about these subjects because it's like, I have no one to talk to, right? And so we just got through Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's like you're around family, and a lot of times families talking about politics, and you're just like, oh man, I can't even talk about anybody with these topics because they're not even in my ballpark. However, as you've discussed, you want to be compassionate with people. And then one of the great phrases I got from you was that doctors don't heal broken bones. Doctors align broken bones and the body heals itself. And so could you talk a little bit about how like people are already anarchists, they're already voluntarists, and they're kind of just under this deep cultish belief system. You said there's no rational logic involved, but it's belief system. and kind of to understand that they're in like a deep trance, and so how to approach that with patience and with kindness.
Right. It isn't just analogous to occult deprogramming. It is occult deprogramming. And the fact that there are about 7 billion people in the cult doesn't change that fact, that the psychological patterns are still the same. And so, yes, you need to be patient and understanding and all that. You also need to know how to bring out of them what is already there, instead of being in the mode of what I call evangelical mode of sit down, shut up, and I'll tell you what you should think, because that works pretty much never. You need to find the part of them that already understands everything you want to tell them, because you don't really need to introduce much of anything. You need to know how to use questions to get them to heal themselves from the lie they were taught. And just like the doctor and the broken bone, the doctor can set things up so that the body can heal itself, but that's about it. And it's a little bit ironic that we need to tell anarchists, you do not have and should not have the ability to force anyone to think anything. But so often we naturally sort of go into that mode of, I'm going to talk you into agreeing with me. And we find it doesn't actually work that way. But you can set things up and invite them to look at things so that they can deprogram themselves. You can't deprogram anybody. You can help them do it to themselves if they so choose. You can make it, a lot easier, a lot faster, a lot more comfortable, but they have to make the choice. And when you're sort of at peace with that, it makes the discussion a lot easier for them and for you if you're not like invested in, I have to like wring your neck until you agree with me, because that doesn't ever work. Right. And we teach a bunch of these things in a course where you have to work more on your own mindset and your own view of the discussion to actually be effective, because it's so easy to focus on the other person and say, well, they're the one with the stupid belief system, so they're the one that has to change. Well, no, if you actually want to be effective in changing them or helping them to change themselves, you have to change yourself first and not let your own psychology set off their psychology and make it into the 1,000th argument you've had with this person that goes nowhere.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned before, it's like, it really is a cult. It's a cult belief system. So logic's not going to help. You have to understand where they're coming from. And you mentioned the psychological triggers, and you're not going to be able to convert them, sometimes in that first conversation. Also, you say, which is so amazing, is that somebody will come up to you, 5 years later and say, I was, thinking of what you said 5 years ago, and I'm starting to get it because it takes so long for the mind, and we have to discover it for ourselves, because we're talking about truth, right? The principles of self-ownership, the principles of non-aggression, self-defense, these basic things which maybe weren't really expressed in the Declaration of Independence, other than your natural rights to your life and liberty, pursuit of happiness and property, these kind of things. But like now we're starting to realize in the community, this is our 6th year we've been doing Anarchapulco, and we're starting to gather other minds from around the world. These other events in Vegas, Arizona, Portugal, Philadelphia, and we're encouraging other people to take up your own leadership and do a little event with 50 people or 100 people, because these ideas are actually solutions to the problem of there's this cabal, the Federal Reserve and the school system and the military-industrial complex and all these rackets and all this criminal behavior. The solution is to opt out of it, in my opinion. And I'm curious, what you think, because you've been one of the staunch advocates for not even participating. By participating in the system, the political system, you're actually giving it legitimacy when it is not legitimate. And, one of the great guys that, I don't know if he influenced you at all, but Lysander Spooner, back in the late 1800s, he said that the Constitution has no authority because we didn't sign it. I can't be bound to a contract that my grandparents signed. I'm a free individual. And so that realization of being around other people is so inspiring and so hopeful. And then you're in a room with people. So it's like, man, maybe we can turn the ship around. And then the other, author I really admire is, he's a modern author, 18th Day of Weshi Square. He said, the state is intergenerational organized crime. And so if we understand it's been intergenerational, it's been passed on and passed on. So there's not this, this huge break in the past. It's like, we're the ones, we're the ones bringing this truth. A lot of, thanks to some of the great work that you're doing. So maybe talk about like how how long it takes for people to realize this, or, you know, you first hear about it and the seed starts to germinate. We're kind of like planting seeds, you know, like Johnny Appleseed of freedom. What can you say about like the long-term strategy and just talking about freedom and helping people understand that they are free already?
Well, on the bright side, I see a lot of people going through the process a lot faster than I did many, many years, like a quarter of a century ago. And a lot more people able to think about it. And it's actually sort of weird, and it seems almost magical to me how quickly a lot of people now can, if you approach it the right way, can say, yeah, I kind of felt that deep inside, but I didn't necessarily think of it that clearly. And they're the ones I refer to as default anarchists.
Yeah.
They were waiting to be that. They just hadn't had the pieces filled in, and they just sort of thought, well, politics is what there is. But I also wanted to throw in one of the biggest reasons I'm optimistic. A quarter of a century ago, I was politically active, I'm ashamed to say. And part of me knew that's not going to get to freedom. That's not ever going to fix anything. It was just sort of, well, I have to do something. And deep down inside, I'm like, I know, but this might as well be nothing. You can't get there. But the beauty of this is statism and the belief in authority. It's like the plug in the wall that powers the whole machine. People don't even need to understand like how the Fed works and the warmongering, the false flags, and, you know, Ponzi schemes, Social Security, 80 bazillion evil things the state does. All they have to do to unplug the whole thing is get enough people to realize they have no authority. They have no right to rule us. So who cares? The rest of it doesn't even work anymore. And watching people go through that, and I've, you know, been privileged enough to have a front row seat to watching hundreds and thousands of people go through the process of giving up their own statism, and it continues to accelerate. And those in power try to like do divide and conquer, and so there's like the alt-right and there's anarcho-communists and people trying to drag it away, and like, you know, do your worst, keep going. It doesn't matter. The ideas continue to spread. But if we get better at communicating, it accelerates it so much faster than if we just sort of, you know, are frustrated yelling these ideas out at the world. Because it's, you know, it's one thing, you know, I have a number of books and videos and more articles than I can count. That's sort of a one-directional thing. It's a, here's some ideas. And maybe there are some people out there who will put themselves in the path of the ideas and get hit in the head and look at them. But to really spread it, we need to actually have conversations where we're hearing the other people. And that brings me to not only Candles in the Dark is about hearing the other person. One of the things we teach in Candles in the Dark is if you're talking more than the other person, you're doing it wrong. And so I'm even going to try to incorporate some of the methods into my talk at Anarchapulco, although when it's me on a stage, if I don't talk, nobody does. So that's a little bit weird. But it's still going to be about bringing out of people their own opinions. Instead of saying, you should think this, you should think this, you should think this. The reason my talk is going to be called You Tell Me is because it's mostly questions. Like, do you believe this is okay? Do you think humanity should be this rather than that? And it basically uses some of the more common answers that people give to the questions we use in Candles in the Dark to show that this is what almost everybody believes deep down inside. It's just been held down by authoritarian indoctrination. We don't have to indoctrinate them in a different direction. We just have to peel off the lie and let loose the anarchist that was in there the whole time. And that's true in the vast majority of people, other than maybe complete sociopaths. Other than them, everybody already is a voluntarist. And I've got to watch hundreds and thousands of people go through the process. And it's so fascinating and encouraging to see people go through that and to see them go through it way more quickly and way more comfortably than I did. I took years to give up that last little shred of statism to a degree that's embarrassing. And now I see people just roaring through it. We still have to be patient with them, but they go through it a lot faster than they did 10 and 20 years ago.
Right. And I just want the viewers to understand the importance of what we're talking about, because I just saw a poll, I think it was USA Today, and it said like 92% of Americans now believe their basic rights are under threat from the government. It's like, yeah, forced vaccines, increased taxation, property tax, guns in Virginia. I just saw an article too. They're trying to outlaw the teaching of jujitsu and Krav Maga, basic like self-defense martial arts stuff. I'm like, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. So when people they start to say, man, I think the government's bad. I say, yeah, they're a terrible organization. I say, well, what do you do? Then you can help them understand. Maybe you got to keep your money, put it in crypto. You have an intentional community, take care of your own health. Something you can do a lot, but if you keep participating in this, red team, blue team nonsense, you're very confused. You don't understand the roots of the organization and what they're trying to do long term for you and your children. So maybe we could dive a little bit into some of the questions, because I give the example that you gave was about the doctor. One of the other ones was the questions I got from you was, can you delegate a right that you don't have, or can you give away something that you don't have? And this goes to talking to statists about what do they believe. Where did the government get the ability to tax and to force us to do things and require licenses and permits to work on our own property, to gather water? I mean, these guys are out of control. And so that's one of my favorite questions. And I'd love to, if you could share some of the other questions. I know you can't compress 2 days or, 4 hours, 2 hours into 20 minutes here, but like a few other questions to give people a little teaser, a little sampler of what they get, because it's so valuable. The stuff that you walk away with. You even have like a little booklet that you like made. I don't know if you're still doing that one, the little guide. You're like, it's like a study guide on how to talk to statists about their beliefs and kind of make some forward progress. So is there any other questions or statements that you make that some of the people who are thinking about taking your seminar or online course can learn about, so they can see, man, this is like kind of transformational communication, and maybe entice them to join us live or join us online?
Yeah, I'll sneak in this little thing. Basically, the goal of all of the questions is to get the person you're talking to see the conflict, which is not between you and them. It's between their own internal voluntariness that wants to be free and thinks it has the right to run its own life, and the authoritarian garbage they were taught, and they conflict. And so all of the questions in one way or another are designed to basically ask them, for example, one of them is there ever a point at which you think it's actually morally righteous to disobey the law? And almost everybody can think of some example, whether it's like here and now or theoretically in some other country or something. Go, okay, if that was the case, then I would disobey the law. And then from there, you lead them through the fact that they basically just said, at the end of the day, they don't believe in authority. Because if you say, those people over there have the right to rule me, authority, until I decide that they don't. Well, that means that they don't. It's like, right. It's like saying that guy is my slave master, except for the day I decide he isn't. Okay, well then he already isn't, and stop playing the weird games of pretending he is. Yeah. So that's one of the lines of questioning. Another one, like you said, is can you delegate rights you don't have? Now, for a lot of people, I would word it more simply, because they don't think in these terms, and you have to start it really simply, like saying, if it's wrong for you to do something, do you think it makes it okay for you to go get somebody else to do it for you? And when it's put that way, almost everybody instinctively says, well, no, of course. Like, it's not okay to beat up your neighbor and take his stuff. Well, how about if you ask somebody else to beat up your neighbor and take his stuff? No, that's still bad. It's just bad and cowardly too. And so everybody understands that, and then you gently walk them through until you get to the point where they realize the only reason anybody ever votes is to try to get other people to do stuff for them that they don't have the right to do themselves. It's the only reason I voted as a statist, because if you can just do it yourself, just do it yourself. Like, people want government to do things they know they have no right to do. And then you have to sort of gently and with lots of patience and understanding help the person sort out, yeah, but don't we sort of need, but wait, is that okay? And give them all the room in the world when they get to the point that you can see the ideas rattling around inside their head. So a lot of the questions end up being in that direction. And it can be things about democracy, like, do you think it's okay for a majority to force a minority to do whatever they want, as long as they do it by way of elections and legislation? And almost everybody will go, well, no, sometimes that's wrong. Okay, when is it right? And get them to start to look at the fact that they don't know. They literally can't answer questions about their own belief system because they've never looked at it. And so the entire point of all the questions is to get them to see that there are two choices. Either they own themselves or government owns them. There's only two. There's no in between. Right. At the end of the day, one of those wins out. either their conscience and their judgment and their free will outranks all the commands of government, or they are beholden and must, that they're morally required to obey even if they think it's wrong, which almost nobody will say that.
Right.
At the end of the day, they have to pick one, which is you're a slave or you're an anarchist. Those are the only two choices.
Yeah.
Everything in between is from the political mythology that teaches us, well, we're sort of about freedom, but we have to give up some of our freedoms to blah, blah, blah. And they represent us and yada, yada, yada. All the mythology, the questions are designed to dig underneath that and get the person to realize, yeah, this doesn't really match what I believe. And you have to know how to ask the questions, which depends on, your own state of mind and how you're viewing the discussion and how you're viewing the other person, and where you're trying to lead them to get them to sort out their own stuff. Not so you can sort it out for them, because you can't. It would be convenient if that was possible, but that would require dominating and controlling them. But to help them sort it out. So that's what all the questions lead to.
Yeah, and I think it's really amazing as we take on this conscious understanding of life. It's like, what is human life? And it's our responsibility to create our own beliefs. And if these beliefs were forced upon us and we actually didn't choose them, then we have to re-examine our own beliefs and like, what really do I believe? What really, is my responsibility? And you said it. This is, I think, the issue of our lifetime is freedom versus slavery. And of course, the mental slavery is where it all begins with the indoctrination of the children, the media, the sports programs that put giant flags on the field and the courts, and they have reverence to this criminal, murderous organization. And there's nobody who's like, hey guys, this is not good except us. And so there's people rising up, tens of thousands of people. There's probably millions of anarchists, voluntarists on earth, I would say, maybe people in the closet. And so when you get together and have these kind of conversations, it's like, I'm not the only one and I'm not by myself. And so the forced vaccine issue has really been the canary in the coal mine for me. Like, these guys are actually injecting these chemicals into the kids, and they're forcing the kids to go to school too. I mean, this is serious. And so for me, I feel like a lot of urgency. However, in your course and in your speeches too, it's like, well, I should say, like, you don't want to have that desperation. There's kind of this, like you said, ask questions and listen. So what's your thoughts on that? It is urgent and it is like super insane what's happening, but how do you approach it when you're talking with people? Like, I'm not desperate. I'm like patient. I'll wait, but it is kind of timely that we have this conversation.
Right. And that's one of the things that takes the most self-control is when you realize how important it is, don't be in evangelical mode, but be calm and patient. But that's a perfect example because for different people, there's different issues that they focus on. Some people it's gun rights, and it can be vaccines, it can be taxation, it can be immigration, it can be a zillion different things. But in Candles in the Dark, rather than taking your own priorities and values and concerns and saying, you should care about this, the goal is to use questions to find something that they don't like about government. And you can do that with anybody. There's nobody in the world who says, everything government does, I just love it. Like, the most staunch right-wing conservative, you can find a big list of things government does that they hate, and the most collectivist liberal, you can find a big list. It'll be different than the other guy's list, but it'll be a big list of things that they don't like government doing. So you find the things they're concerned about, and you say, well, first of all, do you think it's right for government to forcibly dominate you this way or to force you to fund things that you're morally opposed to? They're like, no. And you agree with them. I agree. I don't want you forced to fund that either. And that tells them that you're on their side. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. This guy doesn't want to be dominated. Yeah. And instead of doing your preferences, which might not match theirs, you basically find a way for them to express the freedom they wish they had and say, I want you to have that too. I don't want you to force to fund whatever it is, public education or abortion or vaccines or whatever it is. And if it was up to you, like one of the questions we asked, if it was up to you, would you like it if you could just go through the government budget and say, I'm not paying for this, this I'm okay with, like maybe I'm okay with roads and libraries, whatever, but I'm not going to pay for the things I'm against. And everybody, so far, every single person we've asked that up says, yeah, I would like it. And then the next question is, well, would you extend that to me? Would you let me do the same thing? And sometimes there's a bit of a hesitation, but then they realize, wow, how obnoxiously elitist would it be to say, no, I should be free and you shouldn't. And usually they go, yeah. And then you extend to, how about everybody?
Yeah.
And we've done this live, this particular line of questioning at Kendall's and Dart over and over again. Every single time they've said, yeah, I guess I have to extend it to everybody. Now, they don't realize it, but right then they just decided to declare themselves to be anarchists. Because if you get to decide what to pay for in government, it's not government anymore. It's just somebody offering a service, and you can go, no, thanks.
Right.
And so, I mean, of course, you still have to fill in the blanks, and you still have to walk them through and you know, build up an actually coherent belief system for them by way of questions. But you bring out of them the things they already don't like about being repressed and controlled and taxed. And instead of like arguing about which things we should like and which we shouldn't, you find their concerns and their priorities and the things about them that goes against their own authoritarian indoctrination, and use that to help them decide that they're not beholden to these people. So you're basically asking them, do you think they have the right to do this to you? No, I agree they don't have the right to do that to you. Don't you think you have the right to run your own life? Yeah, I agree you have the right to run your own life. Then you just go from there until they realize that's what they've been inside the whole time, and there's just this layer of mythology that's been holding it down all the time, and you're basically, you know, watering the plant to break up through the shell of statist BS they've been taught their whole life to actually free them.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's one of the most exciting things to discover that you own yourself. You came from your mother, wherever you came from, and that's it. And this organization is just a coercive group of people who think they can rule you. They're using the mythology, like the divine right of kings, that we rule you because you're born here, and that's why we rule you. This piece of paper, you know, I think the Declaration of Independence has some decent stuff, but just, you know, not time to evolve. You know, this is why the theme of Anarchapulco 2020 is evolving. We need to evolve beyond coercive organizations, coercive individuals, and really distinguish, are we free or are we slaves? And how are we going to proceed with this tyrannical legislation and all these bills? And let's hire this king or queen to rule us. It's like, no, I'll be president of me, you be president of you. We'll take 100% responsibility for our actions or inactions. And maybe that's what holds back a lot of people. It's like, I don't know if I can handle all this, or, you know, like security services, we hear about the police or the roads or national security. Well, we've been thinking about this, and there's other people who've written about it for decades. So if you're having these kind of concerns, you're not alone. And I invite you to come down to Anarchapulco in February. You know, there's a health component, there's a family camp component, there's investment, internationalization, if you want to be a permanent traveler or prior taxpayer, and learn how to maneuver around the system. And also with Larken is learn how to talk to people about freedom, because it's not going to be on the news. It's not going to be in the movie propaganda unless we make our own movies, but it's really up to us doing one-on-ones. Larken's been doing some great stuff for decades. One of his great documentaries is It Can't Happen Here, The Myth of Authority, Statism, The Most Dangerous Religion. Of course, his book, The Most Dangerous Superstition. I highly recommend you get that. But he's been doing this, putting out content, and now we have the opportunity to be live with other people, have conversations, ask him questions, ask Amanda, meet other people. Last year I was in their seminar, and I met this couple from India. And I said, how are you doing? They're like, oh, it's really good. We're enjoying it. And I said, do you have any freedom people in your community in India? They're like, no. I'm like, it's like the same thing. I'm in California, you're in Arizona, Larken, and people are coming from all around the country, all around the globe to meet other people, and they'll be in his seminar. So I can leave it like there. Larken, any final comments or thoughts you want to share with people who are maybe thinking about coming, maybe on the fence, and maybe they will come, maybe they won't come, but they get a chance to come see you live from their main stage talk. Any words of encouragement to kind of prod them a little bit to come and join us live in February?
Yeah, I'll throw in this, which I just did a really short video about elsewhere, which is, as awesome as all the programs are and all the speakers and all the things going on and all the side things going on and all the literature and all the materials you can get there, and this is coming from a antisocial introvert freak, every single year, the best part is the stuff I didn't know was going to happen, the people I didn't know I was going to meet, the discussions I didn't know I was going to have. And that's one of the reasons that Amanda and I just hang out in that huge lobby for as much of the time as we can. And we'll go there and we'll just talk to people for 12 hours till we can't stand up. and then we'll stagger up to our room. But as awesome as the schedule is and the speakers and all the stuff going on, being around, 2,000 or 3,000 anarchists is so unusual, and so much cool stuff happens that I can't tell you ahead of time what it would be. You can't tell ahead of time what it would be, because you can never predict it. And every single year, the random connections and discussions and things going on behind the scenes has been the highlight for me. And that's something you can't, you can sit around for a while and wait till the YouTube videos come out of talks. It's not quite the same, but you can't skip. You can't not be there and get out of it the amazing experience of being around that many people who don't want you forcibly subjugated. Yeah. Tell me anywhere else in the world that you can be around a few thousand people who believe you own yourself. If you've never experienced that, get there just for that experience. It's just amazing.
Right. No, that's a great point. Even if it was no speakers and no programs, it was just people gathering for a beach party, it would be just as epic and just as amazing, because it is that lobby right there in the lounge. It has the breeze right there. And just so you know, this event, there's multiple rooms and conferences on site, but it's literally 2 minutes from the beach. You can go jump in the pool, get some coconut drink or whatever you do, drink or don't drink, smoke or no smoke, whatever you're trying to do. There's also plant medicine ceremonies, some other types of things. You're going to learn a lot there, meet awesome people. That's my favorite part as well. And you were there in the beginning as well, Larken, just over 100 people. And some of those people I met those first event 5 years ago, I'm buddies with, and we're talking about doing some other things together with. And this is where it all begins, reaching out, having the in-person interactions, meet people, maybe go on some jet skis or horseback riding. There's really a lot of stuff you can do. So I hope you'll come. You're invited to come down there. It's just right around the corner. And this is our 6th event. And we hope to help humanity evolve. You'll meet Larken, a lot of other cool people. And let's grow freedom. Let's talk about freedom. Let's talk about making the state obsolete with these various solutions and programs and ideas, and meet some cool people. I think you'll have a great time if you come out. So again, it's February 10th to the 20th. There's a pre-event, there's a post-event. The main event is the 13th to the 16th. I hope you'll be there. Larken will be there, and lots of other amazing people will be there talking about freedom and growing freedom worldwide. So thanks for joining us, Larken. Thanks for joining us, viewers out there, and we'll see you soon in Acapulco. Keep spreading the peace, the love, and the anarchy.